I'm Irene. Standing in the Suffolk County Probate Court, I look across the room at Catherine Morgan, her daughter Lily, and my so-called brother Ethan. Catherine is in a sleek black suit, Lily is scrolling through her phone nonchalantly, and Ethan is in an orange jumpsuit, his face pale and full of anger. They have no idea that this isn't just a probate hearing, it's a reckoning. It all started on March 5, 2026. My mother, Linda, was in a coma. The doctor had just said it was a medically induced coma to reduce brain swelling. Ethan, who I'd shared a house with for 18 years, glared at Mom with tubes down her throat and snarled, "She's been a liar her whole life. I'm not pretending to care anymore. Let her die alone." Then he stormed out of the ICU. I stayed by Mom's side, holding her hand. That's when I felt a small, worn cloth pouch in her coat pocket. Inside, there was a brass key marked Box 178, two names I'd never heard: Andrew and Catherine Morgan, and a shaky note from Mom that read, "Irene, if I don't wake up, use the key. Find the Morgans. They know the truth about who you really are." That note was like a thunderbolt. It made me start questioning everything I'd ever known. 3 hours before Mom ended up in the hospital, someone had cut a small hole in her brake line. By the time she got on the highway, there wasn't enough brake fluid to stop the car. She crashed into a concrete barrier at 50 miles per hour, suffering a severe traumatic brain injury. I sat in that plastic chair beside her hospital bed, trying to make sense of Ethan's words. But there was no reasonable explanation. So, I did what I always do when I'm lost: I held Mom's hand. That's when I found the pouch. I tried calling Ethan, but every call went straight to voicemail. It was as if he'd turned his phone off or blocked me the second he left the building. 6 hours into my vigil, he finally texted, "Let me know when she's gone. I'll handle funeral arrangements." It was like he was waiting for a package delivery update. I started to dig deeper. I pulled out my phone and Googled Andrew Morgan. The first result was an obituary from the Boston Herald. Andrew Morgan, 70, of Back Bay, passed away in 2022 after a battle with lung cancer. He was the founder and CEO of Morgan Enterprises, a leading tech company in New England. His estate was valued at approximately $400 million, and according to his 2021 will, it would be distributed only to his biological children. I then searched for Catherine Morgan. She was a well-known socialite and philanthropist in Boston. She was on the board of several major institutions, including the Boston Museum of Art and the Children's Charity Foundation. Boston Magazine called her the Queen of Back Bay Philanthropy. And then there was Lily Morgan, a 28-year-old social media influencer with 20,000 followers. She posted pictures of her luxurious vacations in places like the Maldives, Dubai, and the French Riviera. Her bio said, "Living my best life as an heiress and a change maker." I scrolled through her posts and found one from April 2024. It was a birthday cake with the caption, "Happy 26th birthday to me. Born April 15, 1998. April 15, 1998. The same day I was born." And Mom's note said the Morgans knew the truth about who I really was. My family back then was quite different. My father, Tom, was a carpenter. He was a hard-working man, always building things around the house and taking on side jobs to make ends meet. Mom was a librarian at the local library. She loved books and spent hours reading to me when I was a kid. We lived in a small 2-bedroom house in Salem, with a tiny garden that Mom tried to keep alive but never quite managed. Ethan was 4 years older than me. He had blonde hair and blue eyes, just like Dad. I, on the other hand, had dark hair and brown eyes. People used to say, "Ethan got all the family genes." I'd laugh along, but deep down, I always wondered why I was so different. Mom would say I took after her great-grandmother, but I'd never met her or seen any pictures of her. Ethan always got the better deal. He got a full-ride scholarship to Harvard, courtesy of Dad's savings. He got a brand new BMW when he turned 18. When I asked for help with my community college tuition, Dad said they were short on money. So, I worked 3 jobs, took out loans, and graduated with $50,000 in debt. I became a freelance web designer, constantly hustling for rent money. I started to notice some strange things about my family. There were no baby photos of me before I was 15 months old. When I asked Mom why, she said they'd lost the photos in a move. But everything else from that time was still intact. And after Dad died of a sudden heart attack in 2024, Mom changed. She installed security cameras around the house, changed all the locks, and started writing everything down in a journal instead of using her phone. 2 weeks before Mom's accident, she pulled me aside and said, "Irene, if anything happens to me, look in my coat, the gray one. I'll leave you instructions." I laughed it off, saying nothing would happen to her. But she squeezed my hand and said, "Promise me." I promised. 2 days after Mom's accident, I got a package. It was Dad's autopsy report. I sat in my apartment and read it line by line. The cause of death was listed as cardiac arrest, but buried in the blood work section, there was a line about an elevated potassium level. I googled elevated potassium murder, and the first result said that a potassium chloride injection could mimic a heart attack and be nearly undetectable if administered correctly. The autopsy also noted a small puncture wound on Dad's left inner elbow. I called the paramedics, and they said they never placed an 4 because Dad was already dead when they arrived. I drove to Salem to meet with Dad's coworker, Mike. He was shaking as he told me that Dad was investigating something about hospital records from 1998. He said Dad kept saying, "If I can prove this, it changes everything." He also gave me a small notebook he'd found in Dad's truck. Inside were handwritten notes about Boston General Hospital, April 15, 1998, 2 babies born on the same day, a nurse named Helen Parker who retired in 2012, and a doctor named Dr. Emily Davis. On the last page, Dad had written about meeting an investigator named George Miller. He was supposed to meet George at the hospital basement, but something felt off. George asked too many questions about Mom and Ethan. Dad wrote, "Pray I'm wrong. If I'm reading this and I'm gone, it was a trap. George Miller works for them." Dad died 2 days after writing that. I also checked Mom's phone. In her photos, I found a folder labeled Evidence. There were 20 photos of a black SUV parked outside our house, at the grocery store, and at Mom's library. The same Massachusetts license plate was on the SUV every time. I ran it through a public database and found that it was registered to a security company. When I called the number, it was disconnected. In one photo, I could see the driver, a man in his late 30s, wearing a dark suit and sunglasses. And in another photo from February 10, the black SUV was parked outside Salem Hospital, and in the background, I could see Ethan's silver Mercedes. That's when I decided to go to Boston. I drove to First Boston Bank on March 7, 2026. I walked in with the brass key in my pocket and Mom's note in my wallet. The bank associate led me to a private viewing room. Inside the safety deposit box, there were 7 items: a sealed envelope marked DNA results from a private lab in 2024, a folder of hospital records, a handwritten letter, a small plastic bag with a baby hospital bracelet, a USB drive labeled "For Irene, watch first," a copy of a legal document, a will, and a private investigator's report. I plugged the USB drive into my laptop and clicked on the first video. It was Dad. He was sitting in our garage, looking scared but determined. He said, "Irene, if you're watching this, I'm gone. 2 months ago, a private investigator named George Miller contacted me. He said he'd been hired to find information about an Irene Morgan, not Irene Thompson. He showed me DNA results and hospital records from 1998, and I realized what had happened. You were switched at birth, honey. On April 15, 1998, at Boston General Hospital, a nurse named Helen Parker switched you with another baby girl. We raised you, and Andrew and Catherine Morgan raised our biological daughter, Lily. Andrew Morgan died in 2022. He left $400 million to his biological children only. Catherine and Lily know you're the real heir, and they're willing to kill to keep you from finding out. He paused and then said, tomorrow, I'm meeting with George Miller at the hospital. He says he has proof, but something doesn't feel right about him. If I'm wrong and he's legitimate, he'll help us expose the truth. If I'm right and he's working for Catherine Morgan, then by the time you're watching this, I'll probably be dead. You are my daughter, Irene. Biology doesn't change that. It never could. Take care of Mom and make them pay for what they did to us. I clicked on the second video. It was hidden camera footage of a high-end restaurant. The timestamp said October 3, 2024. Catherine Morgan, George Miller, and Ethan were sitting at a table. Catherine was saying, Tom Thompson discovered the hospital switch. He has evidence. Hospital records, DNA results. He's preparing to expose everything. If Irene Thompson claims her inheritance is Andrew's biological daughter, Lily gets nothing. We cannot let that happen. Ethan asked, what do I need to do? Catherine replied, access. Your father is meeting George at Boston General in June. You'll arrange it. Make sure Tom goes to the right location. George will handle the rest. It needs to look like a heart attack, natural causes. Ethan asked about the payment and Catherine said, $300,000 upon completion. Another $300,000 after Linda is taken care of. I was in shock. I watched my brother, the person I'd grown up with, agree to murder our father for money. I opened the DNA results next. It showed that I was not the biological daughter of Tom and Linda Thompson. But at the bottom, Dad had written, this changes nothing. She's mine. I found out that Helen Parker had switched the babies out of revenge. Andrew Morgan had refused to loan her money to save her house from foreclosure 3 months before. She'd carried the guilt for 26 years and was willing to testify. I discovered that Catherine was hosting a charity gala at the Ritz-Carlton on March 8, 2026. I didn't have the $1,500 ticket, so I borrowed a black dress from a friend and photoshopped a ticket. I walked into the ballroom like I belonged there. I saw Catherine in a beautiful red gown, surrounded by people laughing at her stories. Lily was scrolling through her phone near the bar, looking bored. And Ethan was in an expensive suit, laughing with Catherine and Lily as if he'd never had a family in Salem. I followed Lily to the restroom. When we were alone, I said, Lily Morgan? She turned and sized me up. Do I know you? I replied, not yet. My name is Irene Thompson. On April 15, 1998, at Boston General Hospital, Helen Parker switched us at birth. Lily's face went cold. She said, careful, you're making serious accusations. I told her I had DNA results, hospital records, and Dad's video testimony. She smiled wickedly and said, your father? You mean Tom Thompson? The carpenter who couldn't mind his own business? He made a choice. So did your mother. And if you keep talking, you'll make the same choice. Walk away now, Irene, or you'll end up like your father. We have lawyers and connections. People like George Miller who can make problems disappear. Ethan chose his real family, the one that pays him what he's worth. You're alone. I didn't back down. I recorded our conversation. When I returned to the ballroom, George Miller approached me and said, Miss Thompson, Mrs. Morgan asks that you leave. You're not on the guest list. I confronted him, saying, I know who you are, George. You killed my father. He just smiled and said, prove it. And consider what will happen to a freelance web designer who can't pay rent if she spends all her time chasing conspiracy theories. I drove straight to the Boston Police headquarters. Detective Ryan Johnson met me in an interview room. I showed him everything: Dad's video, the hidden camera footage, Helen Parker's confession, the hospital records, the DNA results, Andrew Morgan's will, and the recordings I'd made. He listened carefully and said, "Miss Thompson, what you've brought me is enough to reopen your father's death as a homicide investigation and potentially charge Catherine Morgan and her associates with conspiracy to commit murder." The FBI got involved. They traced Catherine's payments to Ethan. 2 wire transfers, $300,000 in June 2024 and $300,000 in March 2026, plus a $60,000 cash payment in October 2024. In total, Ethan had sold our family for $660,000. On March 10, 2026, the FBI wanted me to confront Ethan. They fitted me with a wire. I texted Ethan, saying, "We need to talk about Dad, about Mom, about the Morgans. I know everything." He replied, "My apartment, 7 p.m. Come alone." When I arrived, Ethan opened the door and looked at me like I was a nuisance. I asked him why he'd called Mom a liar and walked out of her ICU room. He said, "She's been keeping secrets for 28 years. I told him I knew about the switch, about not being Mom and Dad's biological daughter, and about the Morgans. He said it was complicated. I said, "Dad is dead, Mom is in a coma. Someone murdered them." He said Dad should have left it alone. I accused him of taking money from Catherine to help kill Dad. He exploded and said, "He wasn't my father. He was yours. I'm the biological son. You're the mistake. Mom and Dad knew something was off years ago. They did a DNA test when I was 14. I was their biological kid, and you weren't. But they never told you because they loved you. Meanwhile, I was treated like the problem. So when Catherine offered me money to clean up Dad's mess, I took it, and I'd do it again." The FBI agents rushed in and arrested Ethan. He was charged with conspiracy to commit murder, accessory to murder, and obstruction of justice. On March 18, 2026, I got an email from the DNA lab. The results showed a 99% probability that Andrew Morgan was my biological father. I filed an emergency petition with the Suffolk County Probate Court. Now, here I am in the courtroom. The judge, Judge Elizabeth Harris, takes her seat. The lawyer, Mr. Robert Clark, who is handling Andrew Morgan's estate, stands up and says, "Your Honor, Andrew Morgan's 2021 will states that his estate goes to his biological children only." For 8 years, Catherine and Lily Morgan operated under the assumption that Lily was the sole heir. However, evidence proves that a medical error occurred on April 15, 1998. 2 infant girls were switched at birth. Irene Thompson is Andrew Morgan's biological daughter. Lily Morgan is not. The courtroom erupts in whispers. Mr. Clark submits the DNA results and calls me to the stand. I testify about everything: the pouch, the note, the safety deposit box, Dad's investigation, his murder, Mom's attempted murder, the switched babies, and the conspiracy. After I finish, Mr. Clark plays Dad's video. People in the gallery start to cry. Then he plays the hidden camera footage. Catherine's lawyer tries to object, but Catherine stands up and shouts, "This is absurd. This girl is a fraud. She's after my family's money." I look at her calmly and say, "You're right. I'm not your daughter. Linda Thompson is my mother, the woman you tried to murder." The evidence piles up. Federal marshals enter the courtroom and arrest Catherine, Lily, and Ethan. Judge Harris delivers her ruling. Based on the DNA evidence in my testimony, she finds that I am the biological daughter of Andrew Morgan. His estate, valued at approximately $400 million, is transferred to me. Lily will receive the $2 million bequest for non-biological children, and Catherine's life estate is revoked. 9 days later, I'm at Mr. Clark's office signing paperwork for the Tom Thompson Foundation for Hospital Safety when my phone rings. It's the hospital in Salem. They say Mom is waking up. I drive back as fast as I can. When I enter the ICU room, Mom's eyes are open. She asks, "Did you find the pouch?" I say, "I found it. I found everything. I know the truth about the switch, about the Morgans, about everything." She starts to cry and says, "I should have told you sooner." I tell her, "You protected me. You and Dad gave me 28 years of love when someone tried to kill you for it. You still found a way to give me the truth. You saved me, Mom." I tell her about the court hearing, the arrests, and the estate.